One. What's up? Austin here.
Aloy here.
Xiaowei here.
Kenneth here.
Celine here.
So today we're talking about this rather interesting and seemingly very minute thing. For companies that have a usual Monday to Friday work week, sometimes I notice that people, if their sprints start on Monday, they would say it's a Monday to Friday iteration. But some companies do still say it's a Monday to Sunday iteration. And right now, although it's small, let's talk about which one we think should be the case or which one should be widely used or what are the pros and cons of each within this group. Maybe I'll start. If the work week is from Monday to Friday, I feel like we're not expecting the colleagues to work on Saturday and Sunday anyways. So if we call it a Monday to Friday sprint, we can do the review and retro on Friday and then maybe planning on Monday again. And I feel like that would be okay. Instead of doing it a Monday to Sunday sprint, but doing review and retro on Friday already. And then essentially, I feel like Saturday and Sunday wasn't meant to have anything in it anyway. So I'm not really sure why we would still call it a Monday to Sunday sprint. What does everyone think?
I think for most Scrum teams, it shouldn't be a difference. Working in software development, uh, unless there's a direct like culture of the company working on the weekend.
Okay, because there's been thoughts or sayings that even though the company is a regular Monday to Friday work week, some people insist on having the ending date on Sunday, because they feel like the team members should have the flexibility to arrange their work whenever they please. And so if team members
So, some context that I would like to emphasize is that if it's on your retrospective or your sprint review and retrospective will occur on Friday, then if you are extending the sprint to Sunday, then I don't think that the retrospective and the review, including those that will be done on the weekends. So it's something like, yeah, I'm not comfortable with it, yeah, to be honest.
Okay, imagine for a new employee to the organization, I think the optics might not be so good. But to say that, oh, you still have until Sunday to finish the sprint. I but you mentioned about retrospective review on Fridays and on Mondays. I think that one the team can have flexibility to have it all in one day. Basically you start before you start the sprint, you close the sprint. So you could technically close on a Monday. That's possible too. Yeah, I can have review retrospective on the same day. I know of some teams who do that to have all the meetings in one day. I think that could be one way. So it doesn't strictly have to cut off on Fridays as well. And if you have release on Friday, I think that's
Well, if it's like that on Friday to Friday, yeah, as long as there's no activities anymore after the sprint
yeah, then
review and retrospective, then it's fine. Wherever you place it, maybe.
technically the sprint is time box 2 weeks, right? So I mean that's the recommendation too. It's like a fixed cadence. 1 week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks or a month.
So I have a question, right? If you count for a Monday to Sunday sprint cadence, then how would you go about calculating your team's capacity during a sprint? Do you still have it as a Monday to Friday calculation, but spread it out over 7 days instead of 5 days? Or would you calculate it as 8 hours for 7 days, 56 hours, as in something like that to calculate the capacity?
I think you would still calculate the number of working days where people will be working. And so if within 2 weeks there are 10 working days, considering or assuming that Saturday and Sundays would be off days, then that would still be 10 working days. Austin, does that answer your question?
Yeah, so then I guess if we're still going by 10 working days calculation, then having the Monday to Sunday is more on flexibility of people choosing when to work, much more than a control uh, tool or technique that organizations would use, I think.
But would it also bring about a burnout of the people in the team? Because, for example, let's say it's occurring like every sprint. It's every developer will really end their topics on a Sunday. Then tomorrow it will be the start of another sprint. It will be sprint planning. So it will be kind of a burnout because here we are talking about no enjoyment anymore, no work balance in this space.
I guess what Austin is
Because I'm
saying though
really
is that,
against that.
but what I'm thinking, or I'm assuming Austin is trying to say is, there's work-life balance because the team members can choose more flexibly when they want to do the work. Because essentially, we've only planned work capacity up to 5 working days per sprint. So if they decide to work half day on Saturday and maybe then like they can have another half day capacity freed up in another work day. Is that what you mean, Austin?
Yeah, more or less, yes. Because by planning 5 days of work and then letting the team members choose exactly when they want to utilize these 5 days of work within their 7 days, it could free up more flexibility into their personal life.
Yes, I think sometimes they need to run errands or something. I think that this could help, especially their working professionals. So as long as they deliver the work, I think that's what important. So communication about this is also important from the managers, from the scrum masters to the team.
If I can also add on, because sometimes you have dependencies on availability of hardware or builds, or waiting for builds to happen. So sometimes they might not be working in a sense the regular hours. So sometimes officially it's the 5 working days, then we just leave it running in the background. So technically, the ticket isn't there isn't actually actual work being done by the person, but it's just waiting, for example, the ticket to close automatically or something along that line. So that could be another perspective to consider, maybe.
Okay, so based on Stan's pretext, okay, we have this flexibility. The challenge also there is that if each of the developer will just choose any days, right? For example, within the 7 days, okay, I'll choose to work or to have my day off. Let's say Tuesday and Wednesdays, but others are always like Saturdays and Sundays. So what will happen during your daily scrum? There will be 2 days. There will always be 2 days that the teams or the team are is not complete. If that's the case, that you have the flexibility to work and choose in any days of the week. Well, we have 7 days, right? And you choose which of the 5 days that you are working.
Um,
Yeah, I have.
so it seems like the discussion is more of if we allow the colleagues or work developers to have the flexibility on which working days they'll work on, or which 10 working days they'll be working on. But which is the thing that we've been talking about if we're choosing a Monday to Friday or Monday to Sunday sprint. But something interesting that came up earlier in this discussion, I think that maybe we can also discuss here, using the remaining time of this podcast, is what do you think is the best date to start and end a sprint moving forward? Because just now we did mention, oh, Friday is probably not a good day because, you know, a lot of things are wrap up, we're moving into the weekend and stuff like that. So a lot of teams and online, there's a lot of forums talking about sprints starting and ending in the middle of the week being better. Do we agree with that? And if we stick with that, do we all agree that Oh, let's just use that instead of trying to talk about starting on Monday and on which day it's ending. Because if you're starting on Thursday, ending on Thursday, for example, it'll go across the weekend regardless. So then it's not a point for discussion as much, I guess. So what's everyone's preferred dates to start and end the sprint?
I think let me also try to address Kenneth's question as well. For regarding the missing the alignment during the daily scrum. So I think this is part of the working agreement. So I think if a team member really couldn't make the daily scrum, I think he can do a written update. I think that's one of the suggestion. And also maybe Fridays is a good time to have this sort of written stand up so that people have less of meetings. Yeah. So with regards to Jiaowei, my inclination is towards the middle of sprint, starting in the sprint in the middle of week. Yeah, because these are important events and people usually go off on the beginning and end of week. Yeah. But that's my preference. And also release is also tied to end of sprint. Yeah.
So if you want consistency, so I agree that you spend starting on the mid of the week. But if you want some kind of celebration to really enjoy the weekend, so Mondays will be start of the sprint and ending on Fridays. So that's noted.
I think it'll be nice to have the releases tied to the sprint, definitely. So when everything is done, you make sure that they are released. So it also prevents or you don't run into the scenario where there's an old release backlog and things that have not been released. That's not ideal. It creates more work in progress. But if that's the case, if the release is tied to the sprint, definitely, I feel like there's definitely difficulty in having releases on Fridays simply because, there's not as much people on support over the weekends. So if there's anything that's pushed to production, essentially, I hope or first moments you would prefer that there are people online who can provide support if anything does go wrong from that release. So if that's the case, I would definitely avoid Friday being the end of the sprint or when the release would be. And so I would lean more towards having it on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, simply because I think energy levels on Mondays are generally lower. Anyone else has other experience to share when you think a good or an ideal or your preferred sprint start and end date is?
No, I think the general consensus that I'm hearing from this discussion is Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. But I think in the end, it's a question of does it actually matter?
Yes, it matters. It really matters from my experience. It matters because you need to plan your releases always on Wednesdays, and then, for example, try to stabilize your releases so that usually Fridays will be the actual release or deployment to the release to the production. So yeah, it really matters to define really which one will really work together. Yeah, so far it's as far as the consensus is concerned, it's really at the midweek. Yeah, usually the end and start of the.
Yes.
I would think it doesn't matter if the organization is advanced in terms of agile execution. So if the organization, the whole entire organization is advanced, means there's no issue with release. So usually they won't have problems with that. The CI/CD is set up, continuous deployment is set up beautifully. And also if the team organization is agile, they won't wait till Friday to rush to finish up their work. So things will be ready by then. Yeah, that will be the case where it's no, it doesn't matter, but otherwise, yeah. So how many organizations achieve this? So that's the question. Yeah.
If you're releasing to prod, then if you're listening to productions or operations where they have very specific requests, then shouldn't the sprint sort of match their their availability instead of choosing an arbitrary date on when to end a sprint.
What do you mean by availability?
For example, if you're releasing to a production and then they need to run
Yes,
operations from Monday to Friday, then
yes.
they can only start shutting down on Friday for integrations, for example. Shouldn't you end a sprint on Friday or whenever they have the availability to integrate in?
Oh, your release should not be really on the spot timing on the production integration. It's quite dangerous. So at least you can say cold freeze by Thursday. Then usually, if you are, for example, you're working in a bank, then usually it's around Friday evening, and then working overnight until Saturday. Actually, it's just 24 hour by 7, and at least yeah, usually uh, as far as I know, banks usually do it around Friday night over the weekends. And if that's the case, then your sprint should somehow end around Thursday to get the latest updates.
Interesting point.
Okay, so today we started talking about if a sprint starts on Monday, does it end on a Friday or a Sunday for companies where Saturday and Sunday are mostly regarded as resting days? And talking about this really makes us wonder, how flexible can a team work together, and the mitigation for if the team can have more flexible working arrangements, what they should do during team sync, such as having like written team syncs or for them to update each other through like a chat offline and things like that. But this also brings us to the topic, when do we think is the best day to start and end a sprint? Especially if we can start and end it on the same day. So review, retro, and planning can all be on the same day. What would we prefer? We would generally prefer it to be in the middle of the week, but Austin also raised a really good point whether it really matters. And a lot of us think it matters. And I think this is one of the few things where as a team, if you're looking at factual outcomes and just like numbers, you might not think it matters, but maybe as a scrum master, we will always like to try and help the team work as optimally as possible. And so far from our observation, we feel like starting and ending the sprint in the middle of the week brings less disruption, more fixed cadence, and maybe higher energies during the opening and ending of a sprint. So a side topic that we touched on today is about the releases and how we hope that they'll be tied to the sprint. So right after the sprint ends, maybe there'll be a time or a release cadence where most of the things that are developed in that sprint can be released. Hope that was a fruitful discussion for everyone. And we'll see everyone next time. Thank you. Bye.
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 Yeah, bye bye.